the American League Championship. I don't believe it. It just continues.
High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
Oh, drives one. Right field. Did he do it? He did. Are you kidding me? Let's go.
It's the FSS Plus podcast. We are back. Jason Churchill, Joe Doyle, producer, Casey Bellin. We have a lot to get to. It's been a couple of months since we fired this thing up. We took a little bit of a break. I think the draft, and Joe can back me up on this, drained us of a lot of our energy. Boy, the draft can be long. It's a lot of fun. But after the draft, guys, I was like, I don't think I can't do this. There's like hundreds of players, thousands of opinions, tweets, stories. It kind of wore me out, but here we are back. The FSS Plus podcast, Future Stars series. We've got postseason talk. We have some wild card series to talk to. We're going to talk about Shohei Ohtani's free agency, which got a little bit more interesting over the summer with Ohtani announcing that he's got to have Tommy John surgery. He's got to have elbow surgery. And we're going to talk about the Rays here. The Rays, one of the teams that were ousted early, missing out on the division series, and they have some roster decisions to make. So we're going to jump into that, guys. Mr. Doyle, as you watched this wild card round, and to be honest with you, I had a hard time watching anything but the Twins series, to be honest with you. The Twins had fascinated me for a couple of months. I'm like, teams, like I said this on my show, like a lot of these fans are like, man, why don't you just be the 6th seed so you can play the Twins? I don't think you want that. I'd be careful what you wish for. But of these sweeps in the wild card round, did any of them actually surprise you? Because I'm at the point now where in the wild card round, nothing is surprising to me. Not a sweep, not a full series, either team winning. I just can't get there in the wild card round, Joe.
No, the series that I was most excited for was actually Milwaukee and Arizona. But when Brandon Woodruff went down with the injury, the path to seeing Milwaukee win that series got a little bit tighter. And so, no, I've been saying for a while, I think Minnesota is going to be a really tough out. They've got so much firepower from the left side. And I think for the Houston series, they're going to require a good start from Framber Valdez, because if they don't, Verlander and Christian Javier, they can get touched up a little bit by that lineup. But to answer your question, no. I mean, Texas has been one of the most ferocious offenses in baseball this season, and they really took it to Tampa Bay. And Minnesota beat up on some questionable decision making by the Jays. We'll talk about that another time. I really like the youth that Arizona brings, the athleticism that they bring. I think they can be a really tough out, especially because, to me, Jason, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me it feels like that team is built to run. Like when they get into the postseason, you might want to throttle down a little bit the second half of the season to make sure everyone stays healthy. But you get that roster into the playoffs and they can really, really run. And then, Miami, I always thought was a massive underdog, especially against that pitching staff that Philly has. So no surprises.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise to me was the fact that there were some sweeps. Like the Rays did nothing. The Rays look like an entirely inferior club in that division. I think over the long haul, a lot of these teams are pretty evenly matched, but you see in a short series, you just have to win two. And the Rays were dominated. The Jays were essentially dominated. And a lot of this, Joe, was teams not generating offense. And we've talked about that being, folks that talk about the Seattle baseball team quite a bit with their offensive line. That's what happened in the first round of the wild card with just about every team that lost their series, that were swept out of their series in 2 straight games. They just didn't generate enough offense. And as we look ahead here, the matchups are really, really interesting. That Twins-Astros series fascinates me. Absolutely fascinates because of what you just said. The Twins can hit the ball out of the ballpark. They have balance, and they can certainly pitch. That Astros team, we don't really know what they have pitching-wise. We know they have names, Justin Verlander, Framber Valdez. We know they got guys in the bullpen that can get it done, but this isn't the juggernaut pitching staff that they've been in past years, including last year, even though the names are very, very much the same. Man, that's a very, very evenly matched series. That D-back series, you mentioned speed there. It's a really interesting thing that you bring up, because one of the questions that I get a lot are, hey, can this player on this team basically be Dave Roberts? It's a goofy question, to be honest with you. Everybody remembers Dave Roberts. key stolen bases. I mean, we're almost 20 years ago now. Key stolen bases were key to the Red Sox coming back in that Yankee series, scoring key runs, tying runs, game-winning runs, things of that nature. Teams don't have players like that. So if you're going to steal bases, generally speaking, the speed, the ability to swipe bags has to be in your everyday players. And you're right, Joe. The Diamondbacks have that. What do they got? 4 guys that are capable of stealing 25, 30, 40 bases a year. Corbin Carroll, Thomas, Ketel Marte, like even Christian Walker can run a little bit.
McCarthy.
It's a really interesting thing to keep an eye on. And can the Dodgers keep those guys off base and control the running game? I think they're equipped to do so. They have a lot of veteran arms, and Will Smith certainly knows what he's doing behind the plate, but that could be a key factor to watch in that series. Is there I know the Braves had the big season. They were the best team of the regular season pretty much from start to finish, and they were pretty darn consistent the entire season. But is there a significant favorite in the National League right now? In either league, really, but we'll start with the National League. Do you see a team over there that you would just be surprised if they didn't get to the World Series?
No, I think everyone says Atlanta, Los Angeles chalk, right? But as I've learned over the last couple of years, like, do not bet against Philly. Like, don't do it. They always put on a show in October, and I think this October is no less. Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, they've got the pieces. Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber is the best October player I think we've seen. Well, at least he's in the conversation. Kike Hernandez, Randy Rosarena, guys like that. But no, I think any of these, I would be legitimately surprised if Arizona got there. But I think Los Angeles, Philly, and Atlanta are all solid choices to go to the World Series. The one thing that I worry about with the Dodgers is I don't know if they have a stopper in that rotation. Like, I don't know if there's a guy that's going to go out and give you 7 scoreless or 7 innings of 1-run ball. And while they've got some really interesting relievers, and Dave Roberts and that team have really gotten an understanding of how to deploy those guys best, it's hard not to look at that roster and go, they're an arm or 2 or 3 if you include the bullpen short. But I want to ask you this. I want to flip it back to the American League really quick. You said you were fascinated with the Twins, fascinated with the Astros. Something I keep getting hung up on is the Twins playing at Target. That left field porch is so short. It's high, but it's so short. And it really plays to what that lineup looks like. I wonder how that lineup plays in Minute Maid with, the long right field porch and the short left field porch. And, Houston's kind of built for the Crawford boxes. It almost feels to me a little bit like this is setting up to where Royce Lewis is going to have to be, and he was spectacular in the wild card series. It almost feels like Royce Lewis is going to have to take advantage of Minute Maid Park if Minnesota is going to keep up with what Minnesota or with what Houston can accomplish offensively.
Yeah, oddly, and I don't buy this over the long term, but oddly, Houston was better on the road than at home, just in terms of wins and losses. Offensively, they're a little bit better at home than they were on the road. But you look at the Twins, and they're essentially an average offense away from target field. But that doesn't appear to be related to handedness, which is really, really interesting. And I know there's no Byron Buxton here, but you're right. They were looking for a right-handed punch at the deadline. They talked to just about every club that had someone that was remotely interested to swing the bat from the right side, particularly at first base, DH, and in the outfield. It's interesting because the ball travels even to right field in Houston, even though you don't get that short porch and there's the weird, the way it cuts in from left field to the opposite side. But I just wonder here if the home field advantage doesn't make that big of a difference at the end of the day. No, when you see the trends sample, and you see the matchup, it is a small sample.
We're talking about a 27 inning burst. Who's gonna get to 3 wins first? And I just think
who pitches the best, right?
Who pitches the best? I mean, Sonny Gray looked so good, and Joan Duran is just electric. Minnesota's got a sneakier staff than I think a lot of people give them credit for. And I'll tell you what, man, Kenta Maeda, he's probably not going to start another game. Maybe he will. I haven't read up on it. He's a weapon. He's been there. He's done that. He's done the October thing. He pitched for the Dodgers. He's a crafty, different look than what you're going to find from much of the league. And I think he could end up playing a pretty big role here down the stretch. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll go back to Royce Lewis. I think Royce Lewis is the key to the series. I do. And it's not because he's right-handed. It's because the Twins are one of those clubs that while they have a lot of punch, you can't get it from 3 guys. you're going to have to stretch that to 5-6 guys, even in a postseason series. And I think we all know that Astros club, that lineup has a lot of experience. Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, to a little bit of a lesser extent, have tons of experience in the postseason, in these situations. They're not going to freeze up. They're not going to get, they're not going to feel, the pressure like some other clubs will. Maybe the Twins will. I don't know. Maybe the Twins getting out of the wild card round erased some of that, but they're going to need some down lineup production, and maybe Royce Lewis comes through there, especially in Houston, because I'm of the belief, and this, there's a little cliche to this, but if the Twins can win one of the first couple of games, get a win in Houston, I mean, you have to feel, if you're the Twins, you have to feel really, really good about your chances moving forward. And I think you're pretty confident going in anyway, because you also can pitch. The series that fascinates me in the LDS more than any other is that Phillies Braves series, because you mentioned the Dodgers don't really have that stopper. And while the Braves theoretically do, the rest of their rotation, I don't want to say it's ordinary, but it's not like you can point to anyone after Spencer Strider and say, well, you know what you're going to get here, and it's going to be really tough for the Phillies to score. And the Phillies, and you mentioned this too, Joe, the Phillies are built for the postseason. They're going to win 87 to 90 some games, and as long as they get in, they're going to be a legit World Series contender, as long as guys like Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber are on this club. So I think that's a lot more of an even matchup than I think. I don't want to say I'm disinterested in Arizona Dodgers and Rangers Orioles, but compared to the Phillies Braves series and the Twins Astros series, yeah, I'm going to be paying attention to Philly and Atlanta and Minnesota and Houston for sure.
I would argue that Philly's done this thing where they go out, they try to win 54% of their games, and every year they seem to be a World Series contender. And it is such a fickle idea. I don't know how they do it.
Well, it might be a fecal idea too, Joe.
No, it's a fecal idea in Seattle.
It might be a fecal idea too.
Fickle and feeble makes fecal, and it's also the front office point of view in Seattle. But no, in all seriousness, that team is just built for October. I mean, they've got the speed in Stott and Turner. They've got the thump from the left side in Harper,
every bit the pitching
Schwarber.
Staff the Braves had this year.
They allowed the same amount of runs. Staff. They might not have the bullets in the bullpen, but they've got the horses at the top. And I'll tell you what, man, they've got some interesting pieces. If Rhys Hoskins comes back and just acts as a pinch hitter, that's a pretty good weapon off the bench if they think that he can even provide any sort of value whatsoever. So, and Atlanta's got some decent lefties in the bullpen. So listen, like at the end of the day, I think Atlanta is tried and true. They're the deeper team. They're the better team on paper. They've been there. They've done that. But Philly's just got the ingredients to go to the World Series, the NLCS, and I wouldn't bet against them.
Yeah, I'm big on. I kind of preach this, and I've talked about this quite a bit lately. I don't believe in momentum. I don't believe it exists in Major League Baseball. I just don't. You could win 10 in a row going into the postseason and get swept out. We've seen it happen. We've essentially seen that happen this postseason. But one of the things we talk about a lot with these, especially these longer series, the wild card series is a little bit different, but they're very much about bullpens. And you mentioned that maybe the Phillies are a little short in the bullpen, but potentially the equalizer here, Joe, and I think you'd agree with this, is you're only going to use 3 starters. You might use a 4th in a 7-game series, but you're going to use 3, maybe twice. And that 4th guy can be part of your bullpen. So if just theoretically speaking, if Philly wants to go Wheeler, Nola, Taijuan Walker, and use Suarez and Strahm out of the bullpen, now you have 2 bullets out of that bullpen that you don't otherwise have. And you might only have to use Suarez or Strahm to start one time in the series. So the other games surrounded around separating a couple of days from that start, whether it's game 4 or game 5, however it works out, you're in a significantly better spot than it might suggest you are on paper with your bullpen. Now I realize the Braves can do that too, but I think the Phillies can actually cover a hole or two in their pen by stretching their rotation out into bullpen roles, the way that we've seen other teams. I think the Astros did it really, really well a year ago with Luis Garcia and Jose Urquidy and guys like that, and even Christian Javier to some extent. I think the Phillies guys are equipped for that. I think I would go Wheeler, Nola, Walker as my main starters, choose between Strom and Suarez if I need a 4 starter. Otherwise, those guys are my pen, pitching in key situations and filling a high leverage gap there, Joe.
I guess my hesitation is, and hindsight is always 2020. The Blue Jays tried to do that, right? Like they tried to piggyback, and I don't know
I'm not talking about piggybacking, by the way. I'm not talking about.
I know you're not. I know you're not. I'm just you're saying leveraging a starter.
It's the seventh inning. As far as a really good matchup to get us out of this jam. Yeah.
Sure, but I don't know if starting pitcher arsenals necessarily work out of the bullpen. Like I don't know. The last couple of years, I've seen it burn so many times. You know, Toronto tries to go with Kikuchi and it doesn't work. Seattle tries to go with Robbie Ray for 1 out, just 1 out, and it didn't work. So I think in theory, like I'll give you 2 gold stars here. Like Matt Strom is a very, very good bullpen type of an arm. He's a unique look. He's a low slide.
Suarez used to be a reliever too. That's why I picked those 2 in particular. He spent entire seasons as a reliever.
Suarez is a good heavy baller, and he does have that track record. But yeah, I just like I wouldn't say either one of those guys is necessarily a weapon as much as they're a means to an end. That's my 2 cents. I look at a team like Minnesota and a team like Baltimore before what's his name got hurt, and I say that those are real bullets. Like Bautista, like those are guys that are going to get outs. I don't know if I necessarily see that with these 2 teams, but in either case, it should be a good series. It should be a close series. And going back to the other series, we'll jump onto another topic here shortly. But going back to the other series, I do think the Arizona Dodgers series is going to be pretty close because Arizona can sneaky pitch, and if the Dodgers aren't scoring runs, they're generally giving up 4 or 5 a game. So. Yeah, that should be a good contest.
Yeah, one more thing on the Braves-Phillies thing. When you look at a guy like Strom, for example, you mentioned the Braves have some guys that can swing the bat from the left side too. Like you get into the 6th or 7th inning, a close game. What is Matt Strom best at in any role? Getting out left-handed batters. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Where you don't necessarily have to bring in your best 2 relievers. You have a guy like Strom potentially available there. And again, it's could. Like we have no idea how this can turn out. We have no idea. Maybe they use Strom in game 3 of the series. I don't know. And I don't know how Taijuan Walker projects to the pen either. So if they swap it up and it's Suarez and Walker getting starts or Suarez and Strom getting starts and Walker's the guy to the pen. I don't know how that works either. Like I'm with you there.
That's what I would do.
Suarez situation, but Strom against lefties. Yeah. I mean, that one makes a lot of sense.
I would rather. I think I would put Suarez in the. I think I'd put Suarez in the rotation just to give a different look. But one thing we haven't talked about really quickly is these postseason games have a knack for going long. They have a knack for going 11 innings. Matt Strom is a great piece to have if you're running low and you need to get through 2 or 3 tough innings. Look at what did Houston do last year? Was it Luis Garcia who pitched like 6 innings? I know that was an 18-inning game, total outlier, but Matt Strom's the type of guy that can give you 3 or 4 really, really good innings in a pinch.
Right. And maybe something like that is the difference in the series, or at least is a significant factor in the series. So all of those series pick up on Saturday. Rangers at the Orioles, Twins at the Astros, D-backs at the Dodgers, Phillies at the Braves. All game 1s. Going to be fun as usual. All right. One of the interesting things that we start talking about during the postseason, to be honest with you guys, I try to put this off. I try not to talk too much about free agency and about trades and about rosters while games are still going on, while the postseason is going on. But we don't really have a choice because, hey, the Rangers, they beat the Tar, they roll. We got to talk about rosters. We got to talk about what they're doing right, things like that. One of the things that comes up for me is the Blue Jays getting ousted, and especially the Rays getting ousted early when they were probably the 2nd or 3rd best team in the American League all season long. And they have some really interesting decisions to make with that roster moving forward. And it includes their ace starter, Joe. We talked about this a little bit before we hit the red button. I don't know that it's really that clear what exactly the Rays are going to do with their ace right-hander for 2024, owing him as much money as they do. He signed I believe it was a 2-year, it's Tyler Glasnow. He signed a 2-year, essentially $30 million deal in August of last year. Now, the first year of it, which was this year, he made a little over $5 million. That means he's owed $25 million next year. Have the Rays ever paid a player $25 million in a season? I don't know for sure.
They haven't.
If
They haven't
have
approached
not,
it.
but it sounds like no, right? Like that seems to be the safe bet. What does that look like? Like, do they have to move Tyler Glasnow? And if they don't, what else do they have to do to make sure that fits? I mean, this obviously isn't a team that spends a lot of money on a year-to-year basis. I mean, this is a team that their 40-man tax number this year was $136 million. Their cash out for their 26-man roster was about $75 million. Are they really going to roll in 2024 with Glasnow taking up somewhere between a third and 40% of their team's payroll? I don't want to say 100% no, but it seems like there's a pretty significant choice they need to make here, Joe.
I think it's even more complicated than that. I'm looking at their roster commitments for 2024, and well, the Rays are a team that could certainly non-tender a lot of these players. There are some dudes that are going to get pretty expensive here. Randy Arozarena is going into ARB 2. That's going to get spendy real quick. Aaron Savali, ARB 2. Harold Ramirez, ARB 3. Andrew Kittredge, ARB 3. Jason Adam, ARB 2. These are the expensive years. These are when guys get paid. Christian Betancourt, ARB 2. Sean Armstrong, ARB 3. Posh, Rasmussen, both ARB. Yeah, I mean, Shane McClanahan's going into ARB 1. So they're going to have some serious escalators here in payroll from what they had a year prior. And they just don't have too many guys rolling off their books. Yeah, anyways, Jake Diekman is coming off. Raymond Tapia, that's about it. So they're going to have to make some choices.
With Glasnow's $25 million salary, they have $74 million committed next year already in guaranteed dollars. That doesn't include all those arbitration cases. There's a handful of ARB 2s and a handful of ARB 3s. It's like, what do they do? Do we expect them to be paying $100 million for their 26-man roster next year? Because unless we do, and have they ever done that? I don't believe they've ever done that. I don't believe they've ever had a $100 million. They have not. They have never had a $100 million 26-man opening day roster. I think the most is about $84 million, and that was last season. They haven't even approached it.
Blow by that. They're going to
very interesting. And I understand that there's going to be some insurance situations to come into play with Wander Franco, and that they're going to get some of that cash back. But that at this particular point in his contract isn't a big enough. Yeah, isn't a big enough situation. So that's he was only set to make $2.5 million next year. That doesn't make a major dent in what the Rays are doing. So are you convinced that probably at least the best route for the Rays here is to try to trade the 1 year left with Glasnow and try to reap some replacements, or do you think they end up having to keep him? Because I mean, while there are going to be teams that will just take on that $25 million, what are they going to be willing to give up for it? Like, the Rays have a pretty difficult. I don't think this is as easy a decision as it might sound like on the surface, just trading away the $25 million.
I think it's actually going to be a little bit more, I don't want to say cut the fat, because these are actually pretty good players, but Manny Margot is set to make 10 mil. Mm. And there's a lot of teams that could use a right-handed hitting outfielder that can play all three spots, and you can stick him anywhere in the lineup. Brandon Lowe, who, while he's had a tough time with the batting average, the dude still hits homers, and he's, durability has been a big issue, but he's set to make $8 million, $9 million this year. He doesn't spark me as the type of guy. Plus, he's not a good defender at second base. He doesn't strike me as the type of guy that the Rays want to employ in 2024 with his, durability concerns and the fact that they have 15 other infielders that can play any of those spots.
Right.
So, you got to find a place for Caminero and Walls and, all of these different infielders that they have coming up the pipeline. That's $19 million right there that you can shave off. I think if I was the Rays, they probably would be better set moving those two players and shaving 19 mil than they would be trading Tyler Glasnow, because you look at this rotation. The Tampa Bay Rays, for years now, this is not a 1 year thing. This is several years, have had a very, very difficult time keeping arms healthy. I don't know if it's a usage thing. I don't know if it's a philosophy thing where they're one of those clubs that's like, hey, you got crazy good stuff. Let's throw at 110% for 3 innings, and then we'll come get you. That has been their philosophy. They're going to have a hard time hitting their innings this upcoming season. And I think having a guy like Glasnow, who's been healthy all season and has the potential to pitch 160 to 180 innings next season, would be a huge feather in their cap. So that would be my guess. I think they would move some position players first.
Who's their shortstop next year, Joe?
Probably.
I don't think anybody believes
he's a really good. He's a very, very good glove. He's a pretty good bat. He's a really, really good glove. And
it did seem like
I would
he
just
was
imagine they would stick him there.
exposed. It did seem like he was exposed offensively this year. We're talking about a guy who's 85
Without
WRC
question.
plus, 201, 305, 8 homers, to where he probably ultimately, in an ideal situation for him and for the club, he's the utility guy. So if they have to do that at shortstop, this is where having the kind of a clog at third base, first base, DH, with Caminero coming up and being ready, their top prospect, having Harold Ramirez there, first base, mostly DH, having Paredes and having Yandy Diaz. And I know that they play some of these guys at second base, although not ideal. They try to get away with some of that, and to some extent they certainly do. It seems like maybe moving one of those guys, I'm not saying who, maybe it's just Harold Ramirez, to try to get more middle infield help, to try to get a legitimate everyday middle infield might make the most sense. And if you are trading Glasnow, maybe that's their target, to try to find someone at second base or shortstop.
I mean, they got Jonathan Aranda, who played quite a bit down the stretch, and Carson Williams is knocking on the door as well, and I'm sure he's going to be able to find a spot in the middle infield. They've got more than enough options at the middle infield. Yeah, they may not have a full assortment until June 1st with some of these prospects. Curtis Mead can play third base. I know that he's been kind of up and down this year, but everyone loves the bat. They'll be able to piece it together offensively. Yeah. I mean, they'll be able to piece it together in terms of getting everyone on the field. But, you list those guys that I just listed: third base, second base. I would think that they would just prefer to put Taylor Walls in at shortstop and let him kind of run with it. That way you have some sort of a stabilizing force on that infield. You look at Seattle. I mean, we live in Seattle, so we've kind of been here watching a team that's struggled to score runs, but they've been steadfast in a defensive shortstop. Brendan Ryan was here. He hit 100. He hit $140 for a few years, and he played 155 games. Jack Wilson. So I think you can still win ball games with a shortstop batting ninth who is kind of an anemic bat. But yeah, I just think, you look at the roster, the way it shapes up, you can clearly cut Manny Margot to a team that could use him. And the Rays, I mean, they could probably go grab some kid off the scrap heap who ends up pitching 130 innings for him and, strikes out 230 guys. So, look what the deal with the Brewers did, where they landed JP Fireeyes. And like that is the Rays, right? You can go get what you need and move pieces that are excess. And I think they just do that better than anyone.
And if they think Curtis Mead is ready, whether he is or not, whether they think he is or not, I don't know. I'm not suggesting one way or the other. But if they think Curtis Mead is ready, and they think Junior Caminero is ready, and I think there's a good chance they think Caminero is ready, we're talking about a team with Mead, Caminero, Ramirez, Paredes, Yandy Diaz, and Brandon Lau. None of them belong at second base. None of them belong at. Now you might be able to.
Jonathan Aranda needs to be fit in there too.
But again, out of those guys, they have too many guys. I mean, those guys aren't outfielders. Like, it seems to me that if they think Curtis Mead and or Junior Caminero are ready for the big leagues early or even on opening day 2024, that one of these other guys is getting moved. And I'm not suggesting it's Diaz. I'm not suggesting it's Paredes. It doesn't have to be. Maybe it's just Harold Ramirez, who's a pretty good hitter in his own right. But that puts a bat on the market. It's just, I don't know. The Rays are really fascinating because they seem, when you look at the free agent market, and we've talked about this quite a bit, Joe, there are not a lot of free agent bats out there to go get. So if you were a team looking for offense, you might need to go trade for it. And the Rays might be a place that you go look.
You put Yandy Diaz on the market and your phone is going to be blowing up. And it's not because he's a star. Yandy Diaz isn't a star, but he does so many things that so many teams covet so well. And I think the Rays could move him for a really good prospect, an arm or they don't really need a bat, but they could probably go get an arm that's in Double-A that's kind of on the precipice of the top 100 for Yandy Diaz, and they could do well moving him. I think he's too important to them to move.
The Rays control Yandy Diaz through 2025 with a club option for 2026. So potentially 3 more years of Yandy Diaz, who, by the way, is 32 years old already. I know he hasn't been around all that long at the big league level, but he's 32 years old already. So it does seem like if they are going to move a guy, maybe that's the guy that they would prefer to move, depending on what they're going to get in return. Really, really interesting that Rays. And we could do this with just about every team, because I think the Blue Jays are in a similar boat with different pieces of their roster. Like I think you look at that Blue Jays team and it's like let me ask you this, guys, really quick on the Blue Jays, and then we'll move on. We'll talk a little bit Shohei Ohtani free agency here. Who's the best player on that Blue Jays club? It's supposed to be Vladimir Guerrero, but it's not. Even if we just talking off, it's supposed to be, but it's not. It's probably Bo Bichette, right? Like it
yeah, I think
like,
so.
like
I mean,
he's
had trouble. He's had trouble staying healthy, and the defense has always kind of been in question. It's certainly gotten better year over year. So I'm not taking anything away from him, but yeah, I mean, they for a team that had Vlad and Bo and Chapman and Springer, that's a lot of all-stars. They don't really have 4 guys that have played to all-star quality. They've all been very, very, very good, and I don't have their WAR numbers
a bunch
in front
of
of me,
2-win guys. George Springer,
a lot of
2-win
2
guy.
to 3.5 win guys.
Alejandro Kirk, 2-win guy this year, 1.5 win guy this year. Whit Merrifield, 1.5. Vlad Guerrero is a 1-win guy this year. That's mostly because of defense, but he was a 118 WRC plus. That's not the elite hitter we expected out of Vlad Guerrero Jr. And Matt Chapman had a really good year, 3.5 win guy, but he's a free agent and he really struggled the second half of the season. It's Bo Bichette. And I just look at, and there are a lot of teams like this. I'm not trying to pick on the Blue Jays, but if Bo Bichette is your best player and there really isn't another guy that you control moving forward that is close, you don't have enough talent to win.
They don't even control.
I love Kevin Gausman. I love their people. They don't have enough talent to win offensively. And this was supposed to be a team that was loaded with young guys that they developed, and it just hasn't turned out that way. I think it's just very strange how, a year or two ago we were thinking completely, at least I was, completely different story about the Toronto Blue Jays right now.
Really quick, and then we'll move on.
How old is George Springer?
35? He's old.
34.
Isn't he?
Yeah, 34 years old.
And are we talking only offensively? Because Kevin Gausman is probably their best player.
Yeah, Kevin Gausman is
for sure.
But when you talk about like it's reasonable, and you're right, it's reasonable because I thought he was a Cy Young guy this year. It's reasonable to think that Kevin Gausman starts to decline because he's well into his 30s. Like Bo Bichette's their best player and their most controllable player because they signed him to that mid-tier extension. They just don't have anybody else. Like if that's your guy, like you can look at every other team that's performing in the postseason right now. They have guys that they control that don't project decline. You have to have offensive players, guys that in your everyday lineup, or you're not winning a lot. You're just not, and you might be limited.
Jason, does Vlad get moved?
Have been experiences.
Does Vlad get moved? I mean, it's sacrilege to say that in Toronto.
Who wants him at this point? Like, is it even a good idea to trade Vlad Guerrero right now? Like,
no, I mean, it's kind of it's the Pete Alonso. It's not even the Pete Alonso quandary. Pete Alonso was way better than him, but Vlad's going to make $17 million this year, or somewhere around that, and you got to pay him again. I just, that team has so many holes that they're going to have to fill, including a new Bo Bichette deal that's going to be in excess of $30 million a year.
Yeah.
Next year's the last year for Vlad. 2024 is it. He could hit the market. And if I was a betting man in Vegas right now, I'd bet he does.
Crazy. And because of that, go back to your initial question here a minute ago. Do they move him? Do they move him? What's he got? He's got 2 years of control left, right? So 1 year until they have to make the decision. Yeah. 1 year
is the window though. It's like it's
exactly.
The same thing with the Mets, right? Like a lot of people say, oh, they should, Seattle's a perfect talking point here. Seattle should go get Pete Alonso. Well, the Mets aren't punting 2024. Their payroll looks like, the chocolate factory at Willy Wonka. Like they're not going to fold shop right now. And the Blue Jays are in the exact same spot. Like they probably recognize that their window is kind of creaking shut right now. Their arms are getting older. Their contracts are getting deeper. I think you kind of run it back in 2024 and then you slap a QO on him and see what happens.
Yeah.
Or you move him in July. He would bring back a pretty penny in July too.
Especially if you trade him now, because again, there are 2 years of control left on Guerrero. You just don't want to take him into that final year necessarily if you don't believe you're going to sign him long-term. You want to start thinking about it right now. I think it's funny that, not to continue to bring up Seattle, but Seattle Mariners fans are pretty ticked off right now. Your team won 88 games. It wasn't enough to get into the postseason. The Blue Jays won a couple more games, got into the postseason, and that fan base is ticked off. And what's interesting is last year, Seattle gets into the postseason. They win their wild card round. They don't win the division series against Houston. Fans really aren't that ticked off until they have a bad off season. It's just like when you think about what actually sets fans off, I think the Blue Jays fan base and the Mariners fan base are oddly in the same situation, despite the fact, Joe, that the Blue Jays did a lot more go for it stuff. They gave Springer the money. They brought in Gausman. They made the Chris Bassett deal. They've just done, and it just seems like these two teams are in the same spot. They are in the same position as franchises with different issues, but the same position, despite the fact that it feels like you said, Joe, the Blue Jays window is kind of starting to creep closed amazingly. And I don't know that we feel that way about the Seattle Mariners at this point at all.
No, I mean, I'll give you a hypothetical, and then this will be a soundbite that the internet can absolutely roast me on. Maybe it's more likely that Vlad gets moved this winter than Pete Alonso, because you just kind of put the pieces together and where those two markets are and where their expenditures are and things like that. There's a lot of teams that would probably be willing to take a shot on Vlad who need a right-handed hitter. Seattle being one of them. I don't want to throw it.
Reminds me of the Francisco Lindor situation in Cleveland.
Maybe Evan White.
Remember Lindor's situation in Cleveland where they waited too long to move him and really didn't get as much as they should have. Even though I don't think it's different because
Lindor was still on the rise performance-wise, and part of that was that he was an elite shortstop. Vlad has seen his defense regress, his batting average regress, his balls in play have regressed, his approach has regressed.
But in terms of waiting, though, that's what I'm talking about. Like Cleveland waited too long. If they trade him the year before, they get significantly more for him. Instead, they waited until there was 1 year left, and then they moved him. That's the parallel that I'm drawing there with Vlad Guerrero. It's interesting. Sure. If they put Vlad Guerrero on the market, a lot of teams are going to be interested to see if they can get more out of them than the Blue Jays have, for sure.
And maybe they do, because Brandon Belt was their best batter with 400 or more plate appearances.
That'll be the soundbite.
Plus.
That is Brandon Belt was the Blue Jays' best hitter with 400.
Podcast.
Seriously, Casey?
Yeah, 138 WRC plus, and Bo Bichette 125.
Wow, that's crazy. Good.
That's
for Brandon
interesting.
Belt, though.
You should be an agent.
You should be an agent, Casey. We're gonna hook you up. I'm gonna hook you. You know who I'm gonna hook you up with, because it'll just be hilarious. I'm going to send you to
Mr. Boris,
Jeff Fry, Mike McCann School of Agenting. I'll explain what that means after this. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Nobody does.
I got a pretty good feel.
You need to help me out here. I need a little more information on that.
All right. I'll keep it short. And then we're going to talk about Ohtani for a few minutes. Get players. Don't do anything with them. It's brilliant. I'm telling you, it's brilliant. Just convince players to come sign with you, take less than other agents, and don't do anything. The players do the agenting themselves. They're either good enough to get $4 million in arbitration, or they are not. They don't really need the agent to really argue that much. Like that's not how it works. And that's how most of the smaller agencies and those agents representing players, that's how they make their money. They want players that are going to get to arbitration, get through arbitration a couple of times. That's how they make their money. I think, Casey, you could do this job, because I think anyone could do this job.
Most of the agents that, I mean, a lot of those smaller boutique agents reach out to me on a daily basis and say, you should see this kid and put him on your board. You could do that, Casey. You could do that.
Easy.
He's already doing that.
I'm putting him on your board, Joe.
There we go. Yeah, that's right. Casey has access to your.
We got to restrict access here.
Post publishing. I forgot about that. That's a good point, Melon.
Oh yeah.
All right, Shohei Ohtani, ladies and gentlemen. Despite the elbow surgery and the fact that he's highly unlikely to pitch at all in 2024, and I think Ohtani and his agent have pretty much said as much. Like, we're talking about 2025 return. This still is, if not the best free agent in the history of Major League Baseball, the most polarizing for sure, and potentially the most valuable. I think you guys would agree. We're talking about a guy who, when he's healthy, helps you with the plate immensely, helps you on the mound immensely, even if it's not for 200 innings a year, and even if it's ultimately at the back end of a long-term contract, mostly out of the pen in some sort of hybrid role, whatever it is. But this is a guy who markets himself just by being who he is, without talking, just by showing up. This is a really interesting time for Shohei Ohtani in Major League Baseball. Joe, he's probably, when we look back to 2018, when Ohtani joined the Los Angeles Angels and the sweepstakes for Shohei Ohtani.
Oh, don't bring it back.
The idea of Ohtani at the time, by just about anyone that I could go back and read or listen to, and I remember speaking to about it and watching video, like this was an accomplished pitcher who was going to be able to step into Major League Baseball and be at least a number 3 with a chance to be significantly better right off the bat, and that he was more of a prospect at the plate. Now, I think that rang true, but I think he developed at the plate a lot faster than most, if not everyone, expected. Right now, when you look ahead to 2024, the first year of what we expect to be potentially a long-term deal, there's probably going to be some opt-outs and some crazy stuff in there in any deal he signs with anyone. This is a guy who can go out there and hit with the best of bats in Major League Baseball. My question to you to kind of kick this off is, in a vacuum, do not attach a team to it. In a vacuum, if you're attaching dollar value to Shohei Ohtani for 2024 only, so Shohei Ohtani, the designated hitter, he's not going to play a position. Not that he can't, but he's not going to play a position. He's just going to be the DH. He's not going to pitch in 2024. What kind of a dollar amount? What kind of a dollar figure can you attach to that? Because when we look beyond
AAV
that,
for this year
just
only,
just for 2024, because when we attach the rest of his contract to that, and we say, well, I don't want to pay him $500 million because he's not going to pitch until 2025. I'll put my palms up and saying, I don't think 2024 should matter because he's probably worth XYZ in 2024 anyway. I'm just curious what kind of dollar range you toss value on him for 2024 at the plate.
At the plate, and this is going to be a hot take. It's only 2024. I'm not saying this is what his AAV will be for 8, 10, 12, 13 years.
And his actual value will never match his AAV. The value is always actually higher than the AAV. Anyway. We know that.
2024 will largely not come into conversations and negotiations because it's just not representative of the player that he is. He's probably a $32 million player, and he's going to get way more than that per year. But you look at, Judge got 40, Trout got 36 and a half. Shohei Ohtani doesn't play defense, does not play the field. And when you're talking about strictly a designated hitter, that brings some questions into the overall value of the player. He no longer can you make the case of he's taking up 2 roster spots in one because he pitches and he hits. No, now
2024, that's not the case. Right.
2024, he's really taken up about half of a roster spot because, or maybe you can still make the argument that unfortunately he is taking up 2 roster spots because he's got to play every day. And he's a DH and he provides no defensive value. So I think he's probably worth 30 to 32 million in 2024. He's still a, best DH in the game, but Judge got 40 million and he's an elite right fielder. Trout got 36.6 or something like that. He's an elite.
So if you were signing
fielder.
Ohtani to a 1-year deal, let's say Ohtani went out and said, Joe, I want a 1-year deal. You would say he's worth about $32 million. Is that what you're saying?
He wouldn't. I mean, he would require more than that because with marketing and PR and gates and everything,
but just
he'd
on
probably
the field,
get 36 or 37 or 38. Okay. I think he'd get 36 to 38, but he's probably worth 32.
When we throw the cost of wins into this mix, Shohei Ohtani just finished a season where offensively, because again, there's no defensive value there. Offensively, he was worth $50+ million. Considering what teams are paying free agents and what they're getting out of free agents. Okay. That doesn't equate entirely with what your $32 million means, but it suggests if you're going to get, I'm not saying he's going to give you 6.5 wins again, but that's what he was worth in terms of free agent dollars in 2023 is over $50 million. The worry I have here for any team out there looking at Shohei Ohtani seriously has nothing to do with what he's worth on the field, what he's worth off the field. My concern would be if I get him to sign with me, Joe, how long is he going to be with me? Like, do I have to give him outs and then he's going to take off into, you know what I mean? And that's probably going to be part of it. That's my only worry.
Let me play devil's advocate really quick. Just because you made the point. Aaron Judge was worth $93 million in 2022.
Yep.
And he got $40 million. So it's not
so let me stop you right there really quick, and then I'll let you keep going. Let me stop you right there. That was one of the most amazing offensive seasons we have ever seen in Major League Baseball history. And how old was Judge at the time? I think 30, 31. I don't think anybody believed that they were buying that season again. Now, if we compare that to what Ohtani just did at age 29, could I see him going 300, 400, 650 again? Maybe. I'd buy that before I'd buy Aaron Judge doing what he did a year ago. You know what I'm saying? I just wanted to throw that in there.
I guess my thing is, I think with the guys that are at the very top of the heap, the free agents that are at the very, very top of the heap, using the in free agency 8 wins per WAR type of a thing. Like I look at Trey Turner last year. Trey Turner had a year that I think a lot of people thought he could repeat. Back-to-back years, 6.5, 6.9. You know, that is worth $52 million per year. And he got 30. And he was 29. He was young.
Yeah, it never matches the AAV. It just never does.
It never matches.
The actual value of the player is always higher than the AAV of the contract. It always is.
Yeah, and it's skewed a little bit by the guys that are worth half a win and get 10 mil. You know, like a JD Martinez, right? I don't know how much JD Martinez was actually worth in 2022, but he probably got more than that 8 per whatever. Or Justin Turner's a great example. He got 20 million. He was not good in 2022. I don't remember. But anyways, in terms of what Ohtani's contract is going to look like, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's going to be complicated as hell. I mean, the way I'm looking at it is I think he's probably going to get 45 a year. And my guess would be it's going to be one of 5 years or a long time. Like it's either going to be, 12 years with the Dodgers, or it's going to be a 5 or a 6 year deal that's a little bit more creative with a Chicago or a Seattle or a San Francisco or one of these clubs that give him an opt-out after year 2, an opt-out after year 3, an opt-out after year 4. Because the fact of the matter is Ohtani wants to win. And if he deems that after 3 years in a city, it's not going to happen, he can bounce at age 32, still get another massive deal. And also the other opt-out thing that is important to consider here is after that second year, let's say he signs for 45 mil per year for a 5 or a 6 year deal. And he goes gangbusters as a 31-year-old pitching and hitting, posts another 9-win season in 2025. I think there's a chance that he gets another 10-year deal worth 500 mil. So there's going to be a ton of opt-outs. It's going to be creative. I do think the possibility exists that the Dodgers could just give him 11 years, $500 million. I think that's totally reasonable, but
it does seem the industry believes
I think it's going to go.
Dodgers are the
I think it's going to go a different direction, man. I think it's going to go a different direction. I think when he got hurt, well, look at it this way. The Dodgers need arms. They need pitching bad. They have failed to land long-term pitching year in and year out. Kershaw's on his way out. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
You're right.
They don't have a ton of options. Arias is
don't know what's going
out.
on with Walker Buehler. Don't know what's going on with Dustin May.
Gonsolin just got cut. So they need arms. And I don't know whether or not the Dodgers are prepared or in a position or want to spend $45 million on a pure bat in 2024 because it doesn't solve their problems. Now, maybe they just say, screw it. We're just going to eat it in 2024 because Ohtani's just worth way too much for marketing purposes and he's going to pitch in 25 and he'll be here soon. But they got issues, man. They've got payroll issues to dive in 2024 for arms, and they're gonna have to address that before they can really go in on Ohtani. I think
there are not a lot of arms. There are a few. It's not barren, but there are not a lot of arms on the market. The Sonny Grays and the Blake Snells, those are the kind of guys that lead the market. If you were to go out, if you're the Dodgers, and go out and get one of those guys and Ohtani, I think you just answered the questions at that point.
Probably,
probably
like a Jordan Montgomery and
yeah. Like there are guys to go out, but you probably have to know that you can piece together a pretty quality rotation first. But the Dodgers seem to be the heavy favorites. I do think there's going to be creativity, even if it's the Dodgers, because I don't think Ohtani's gonna. I think he's just like he's earned it. He's going to want some say. He's going to want some control, and if he doesn't like it, somewhere or One of his favorite teammates is playing somewhere and he wants to go play with him. That's what those free agents have earned. But you brought it up just a second ago, Joe, and I've been saying this for a couple of years. I don't think a team investing $400 million, $500 million, and I'll just be outlandish and ridiculous and say $1 billion in Shohei Ohtani is going to regret it. I think the Dodgers could give him $1 billion over 10, 15 years and end up not regretting it. Like at the end of the day, the guy is a cash cow. He is a cash cow, even in a place that can't market itself, like Anaheim with the Los Angeles Angels. It's incredible. And if you're a team like the Dodgers, especially, that's very uniquely equipped, just like the Yankees, just like the Red Sox, just like the Mets, maybe the Cubs, maybe even the Phillies, uniquely positioned to take advantage of his marketability in Los Angeles. I don't have a number that limits. I don't have a number. Like if Ohtani comes in and says, I want $800 million, I'm saying, okay, do you need opt-outs? Like I'm not arguing with the number because I just don't feel like you can lose. I really don't. And I understand that he's a risk to be hurt. I get it. I absolutely get it. But you can't put a ceiling on what he's worth to you in merch sales and marketing and how much he props up the team as a whole and every other individual player on that roster that puts on that uniform. Whichever team it is, he's going to do that for. Now, if it's San Francisco, Seattle, or Texas instead of the Dodgers, it looks different, but it's still very, very significant. That's where I am with Ohtani. I just think if that element wasn't there, I would feel very, very differently about Shohei Ohtani because again, he's already had elbow surgery once and now he's having it a second time. That would worry me. That would absolutely worry me. And he's not that young anymore. He's 29 now. We know that once guys get to 30, 31, 32, you don't really know. And you start to lose a little bit of confidence in performance along the way. Not that I'm saying in the next 3 years, he's going to fall off a cliff, but that's why he's so marketable. It's insane. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's
insane.
why I think if there's a team, if he's willing to listen to a 5-year deal, just a team that's a little bit more risk averse, a Chicago, a Seattle, San Francisco will pay. Yeah. They'll pay whatever. They tried to do that with Judge. They tried to do it with Correa. But I just think if Ohtani is willing to listen to a 5-year, $275 million deal with an opt out after every single year, $55 million a year for 5 years, and Seattle, you don't have to worry about losing him due to regression because he'll be out after age 34. Chicago, he'll be out after age 34. Like I could see him going
take
in
some
that
of the
direction.
risk off the table.
Take some of the risk off the table and make him by a country mile the highest paid player in Major League history.
It also pulls more teams into the market. If he goes out there and says he's willing to consider things like that, it brings more teams into the market because if it's going to be 10 to 15 years at 40 to 50 mil per, how many teams are in on it? Realistically, 3 or 4?
15, 16. Oh, no. If it's 55, if it's 5 years, you probably get half the league in on it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So if he's asking for 10 to 15 years,
there's maybe
that's
3.
a different story. We're talking 3 or 4 teams, right? So you go the route you're talking about, the shorter deal, the 4 or 5 year, the opt-outs after every year. A lot more teams are in on it. That's when I really, I'd even throw the Astros in on that. I absolutely would. Jim Crane would absolutely be interested in Shohei Ohtani if he was willing to go 5 and 275, like you mentioned, just for example, with some opt-outs.
I'm going to be sick just talking about that.
Yeah,
I
can't see him wanting to go to Houston, but
just really Shohei Ohtani and burnt orange. Come on.
Yeah, bad.
Come on. I don't need to see him hitting home runs into an orange bucket.
The Padres are a team we haven't mentioned here, Joe, and we probably should. Not that they've spent wisely the last couple of years, but they've spent big dollars, and it looks like they're going to at least consider avoiding giving $400 million to Juan Soto by putting him on the trade market this winter. Might that be because they'd rather give $400, $500, $600 million to Shohei Ohtani, or at least 5 and 275? They're going to be in play to some level as well until Shohei Ohtani tells them.
Maybe. I think everyone is going to be in play until he says no. But I've read reports that the Padres were thinking about cutting $30 million in payroll to get under the collective bargaining tax, just because it hasn't worked. So I would be surprised if. First of all, if Shohei Ohtani reached out to Peter Seidler and said, "Hey, I've loved San Diego. It's it's a little bit more quaint. It's a little bit more my tempo. I'd love to come." Peter Seidler is not putting that phone down. That being said, I don't know if the Padres are going to proactively go out and try and buy that. Just because
I think they're stupid, so I think they will. I think they will. I think the San Diego Padres are one of the stupidest organizations in Major League Baseball. Yeah,
it's been
right. Like I think most people that follow me or have heard me talk about the Padres know how I feel about AJ Preller. The guy shouldn't have a job, but some of this money spending was on
baseball tycoon.
Yeah, like some of this money spending was on ownership, is on Seidler, and I just, while it's kind of fun for fans, like winning is the ultimate goal, and the winning part is up to Preller, and I just don't trust him. So I think they're going to be in until Ohtani tells them no, we're out. So interesting. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting.
Padres are in a very, very interesting place, man. The Padres, the whole narrative 3 years ago was this is so good for baseball. Seeing a small to mid-market team spend all this money, it shows that any owner can do it. Well, I think what it's also shown over time is that nothing ultimately, at least in today's day and age with baseball, nothing trumps development. Nothing trumps the ability to, bring forward cost-controlled players that maybe this is the most important part. Players that have come up through the system, won at different levels together, know each other, develop camaraderie, and then try and do it at the biggest stage. I think you're seeing that with some of these, the Tampas and teams like that.
The Braves have done it best. The Braves are a bigger market, not enormous. They're not one of the elite, but they're a bigger market. They have a $250+ million tax number. They're going to pay the luxury tax, but they don't have one single individual player with an elite contract. Not one. They haven't done that with one single player, not an elite contract. Nobody's making $200+ million for them. And that's just because they've got a bunch of Sean Murphys and they got Acuna signed early and Matt Olson.
I just wonder if they're going to miss,
that.
Jason. I wonder if and when they're going to miss. They might not ever miss, but I wonder if they're going to miss with a Michael Harris, or, they've hit with so much excess value out of Albies and Acuna. Acuna was everyone knew that was a bad deal for Acuna out of the gate, but they've hit with so much excess value out of these position players. I just wonder if at some point they are going to have a $25 million guy on their payroll that is sunk cost at 24, at 25. I mean, these are smaller examples, but you look at the Jonathan Singletons and you look at the, who was the kid in Philly that it didn't work out for? But I mean, my point is, what was that kid's name? Kingery? Did Scott Kingery sign a 5-year deal? But my point is, you wonder when there's going to be one or two sunk costs with Atlanta. I don't see it happening, man. Everything that they sign turns to platinum.
Yeah, and I think I said a minute ago that they don't have a $200 million guy. What I meant was they haven't done what the Yankees and the Mets and some of those other teams have done. I do believe Austin Riley's contract is over $200 million. I think it's a $21 million AAV, which is pretty team friendly, but it is over $200 million. But they're not paying Acuna that, right? Like their risk is up there, 14. But it's not out there like the Mets. The Mets put them in a really tough. I think the Rangers have put themselves in a really interesting position because the only way to cover for the Jacob deGroms, being hurt and when Corey Seager misses 50 games is to continue to spend. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But I think the Braves have done it best. And you're right. Like maybe ultimately at the end of the day, they're going to regret the back half of the Austin Riley deal. I mean, he's only 26 years old, but he could be a guy where I could see, like, he's not elite. Like, he's a 5-win player, right? But he's not the elite athlete where you're just like, this guy's going to be good for another 8 years and fulfill the contract and be a 5-win guy all the way through. Maybe that's the guy. But along the way, they might win 2 or 3 World Series. And
I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the guy that you signed. I'm talking about Michael Harris. I'm talking about the guy that wins Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, but what's the hit on that? I get what you're saying, but what's the hit on that when you give a guy like that? Because again, we're not talking. It's not a free agent. They gave him what, $72 million. Like if he's a 2-win player instead of a 4-win player, so what, right? I think that's the advantage.
Yeah, I mean, it's really only sunk cost. It's really only sunk cost the years 7 and 8 that would have been outside of ARB. So, right. No, I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate when I do all this. The Braves have it figured out. They go out, they acquire stars, they lock them up, and they get guys locked up through their age 23 through 34 seasons, and they don't, overstretch their boundaries in free agency. They do it the way They do it the way that you need to do it. And I think that the Giants do it the way that you need to do it. I think the Giants have really, really struggled to develop talent over the last decade, and that's why they're where they're currently at. But they do it the right way in supplementing homegrown talent. That's like I said, they've struggled, but yeah.
Two predictions I need from you before we go.
Okay.
Who wins the World Series? And where does Shohei Ohtani sign? World Series winner. Who's your World Series winner?
Give me the Phillies.
Okay.
Give me the Phillies. They got close last year. Give me the Phillies. You'd be a fool not to say the Dodgers. I mean, there's one thing that you and I didn't bring up. There's a reason they cut like $55 million in payroll to get under the collective
didn't go balls to the wall to get Trey Turner back.
I mean, they could have had Turner, they could have had Seager, they could have had Justin Turner,
both
Corey
Turners,
Seager, Trey Turner. I mean, they've let go of so much talent because I think they knew what was coming. And they're too well positioned not to do it. And outside of Shohei Ohtani just simply not wanting to play in the big city of Los Angeles, which I think is kind of unlikely because he's been close enough this whole time. He might not even have to sell his house. It's hard to believe he goes anywhere else.
Yeah. So you like the Phillies, and at least right now here in early October, you think the Dodgers are the favorite. I'm the same plays. I think the Dodgers are the heavy favorite. Here's the thing. I don't know that anybody, I certainly don't. I don't know that you do, really has a good feel for what Ohtani values most. I think other than winning, and we know the money's going to be there anyway, I just don't really know. Like, yeah, he's lived down that net. I don't know. We're going to find out. It's going to be fascinating. I put the Dodgers 1 as well. I think the Giants and the Mariners are kind of dark horses here.
It would probably be my 2-3.
Yeah, like they should be there. But I think the East Coast thing is overblown because the East Coast thing where Ohtani preferred the West, I think that's way back in 2018. I don't know that exists anymore. Like, he was going to be more comfortable on the West Coast. Is that even still true? And can a Boston or one of the New York teams change his mind? So
New Balance is in Boston.
New Balance is in Boston. He's a New Balance guy. Absolutely.
Yeah,
we know all about
New
that.
Balance guy.
World Series. I really like your Phillies pick. I really do. I'm going to go somewhere different just to be different. But I'm kind of going chalk. I think the winner of the Phillies Braves series wins the World Series. If I had to pick, that's where I'm at this particular point. Casey, give me Casey Bellin, super producer. Give me a World Series winner. Give me an Ohtani landing spot as of October, first week of October here.
Yeah, I'm going to go super wild card on the World Series. Rangers get hot and just smoke everybody with runs.
Okay.
The Orioles are beatable. The Twins are beatable with enough runs. There's my super duper wild card.
Okay.
World Series pick. And if I had to pick one team on Ohtani, I think it's just going to be the Dodgers. He's going to the Dodgers.
Yeah. I kind of hope it's not, because I think it's more fun if it's not. But then in a lot of ways, to be honest with you, if you cover a team or you're a fan of a team in the American League, you want Ohtani in the National League. Like, this is one of those things you should be rooting for these major free agents. Like, if you're in the American League, especially in the East, you were rooting for Judge to go to the Giants or whatever. You should be rooting for Ohtani to go to the Dodgers or the Giants or somebody in the National League. But good stuff there. Hey, we're going to do this every week. We're back on track. We will follow along the postseason. We will talk free agency. We will talk trades. And with Joe Doyle here, we will get down and dirty with the Major League Baseball draft, minor league prospects, things of that nature. So just about anything is fair game here on the FSS Plus podcast. Casey Bellin will keep us straight. Gentlemen, next week, I'm looking forward to having a conversation about how poorly Dusty Baker uses his bullpen in the early stages of the Astros Twin series. That's my.
Can we talk about his black plastic gloves too?
Yes, we can. Casey, put it on the docket. We're going to talk about the black plastic gloves on Dusty Baker. Hilarious. You know what I do want to talk about next week if we can, because awards are going to be coming out in a few weeks. The Manager of the Year award. Want to get your guys' take on it. I have some thoughts on it. They haven't changed in years, but I think we might be able to have a fun conversation about Manager of the Year, just in general, not necessarily this year, but the award existing at all is pretty much my bitch about the MOY. So
hey, can I throw out a quick candidate
next week
before we go?
Yes.
I want you guys to think about Ross Atkins as manager of the year because I think he's a dark horse.
No.
Well, he's not a manager, so
I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I'm not going to.
You might as well.
I'm not going to consider because I'm not considering anyone for manager of the year, Joe. I'm sitting this one out every year. Anyway, we'll talk about that next week. Joe, appreciate it. We'll talk next week. Casey, I really appreciate what you're doing here for the show. We're gonna make this FSS Plus podcast. By the way, we're not going to keep that name. I said that 6 months ago. We're not keeping that name. Somewhere along the way, somebody's going to suggest the name for this thing, and we're going to take it and we're going to run with it. So, but for now, FSS Plus podcast is the placeholder for Joe. For Casey, I'm Jason. We'll talk next week. Peace.
So just chill till the next episode. Falling back on that ass, what a hellified gangster lean, getting funky on the